Are there any apologies for absence?
We've got apologies from Lauren Hutton of Love Buckingham and Councillor Charlie Clare from Buckinghamshire Council.
Okay, and the usual thing, declarations of interest.
There's a hand from Robin.
Sorry?
Just one thing, Chairman. On the, I'll unmute myself. I am unmuted. Chairman, just on the thing, they've got Councillor Warren White still being a member of Buckinghamshire County Council. He's still the only member, according to the paperwork. It might be good if he was a member of Buckinghamshire Council.
Yeah, okay, that's noted. Nina will get that put right. It's only because we work on a sort of a template for meetings, and it's easy to miss that sort of thing.
No, it's fine,
Okay.
mate. It's just that
I was just saying, if you've got anybody's got any declarations of interest, declare as you go, as we normally do. And I'd like to now, hand over to you, Matt, to hear all these good things that's happening in Princes Risborough.
Well, thank you, Chairman. That's very kind, and thank you for the invitation this evening. I'm sure a lot of you have seen some of the work that Princes Risborough Town Council has been doing to support our retailers. We called it the Risborough Basket. It was set up in 9 days at the height of lockdown 1, when there was a real shortage of supermarket delivery slots and general food available in the stores. That was its main drive, really, was to make sure that our residents in Risborough, could get access to food. But it had a second track to it, which was supporting our high street retailers. We've done a lot of work, like I know you have in Buckingham, with economic regeneration. And we were very concerned that our shops would be forced to close for a very long period of time. So what we did is we turned each shop into its own individual, very small logistics hub. So by law, it was able to trade. And it was a huge success. We achieved, I think, by the end of what we call Risborough Basket 1, we achieved in excess of 10,000 orders. That's the equivalent of 1.2 orders per household in Princes Risborough. We also managed to ensure that we have not lost one business so far in Princes Risborough. So that was Risborough Basket 1.0, and it was a great success. We relied on having a good IT infrastructure in place. We developed a website which gave contact information, details, something very similar to Councillor Warren White in terms of Buckingham, what can you get where, who do you need to contact? The big difference that we did in Risborough in comparison to a lot of other local town and parish councils was we provided the delivery service. So we went to every retailer at 2 o'clock every day. We collected their goods, and then we used a team of volunteers to distribute those, not just to the town of Princes Risborough, but to the surrounding parish councils as well. So every council that borders Risborough, the Kimballs, Bledlow, Saunderton, etc., they were all part of the Risborough Basket scheme. And we thought that was very important because those residents in those surrounding parishes drive a huge amount of income into Risborough itself during the normal trading period. So we very much believe that it's one Risborough and it's one community. So we went beyond our parish borders. But, as with lockdown 1, we were mindful that people were going to go back to work, that when they had the spare time in March and April to dial up to a retailer and to wait for the phone line to be clear so they could make a call and place an order, that wasn't going to work when people started getting back on the trains into London or Wickham or Aylesbury. So we needed to create the same level of convenience that a resident would experience with Amazon or Etsy or eBay. So between lockdown 1 and lockdown 2, what we did was work in conjunction with Accenture, the big global consultancy company, and one of their subsidiaries, Javelin Group. And we created Risborough Basket 2.0, as we call it, which is a Shopify-based platform where you can now order thousands of products, about 1,850 at the start. I think it's 2,100 today. different products from a whole range of our retailers on the high street, and not just the high street. We've just signed up Bryant's, the garden equipment and fencing and building supplies merchant as well. And all of those things are on one website, on one platform, and that's delivered same day, free of charge, to Risborough and the surrounding parishes that I mentioned previously. We've been launched about a week. It's going very well. Our residents are very pleased with it so far. Our retailers are over the moon because, of course, they continue to benefit from the government grants for being forced to close, but they are receiving an income via the click and delivery method, and they are also working on click and collect as well. So, you know, we're really, really pleased with it. It hasn't resulted in a significant investment by the town council. I'd estimate by now we've probably spent 20,000 on Risborough Basket, and that excludes the cost of staffing that Sue Griffiths, our town clerk, has very kindly allowed us to redeploy to support the basket scheme. But as I mentioned previously, we've not lost one retailer so far. Some of them are reporting their best ever year of sales. So when you couple that with the financial support that has been available to them, overall, we think it's a very big success so far. But that's just our perspective from Princess Risborough. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Okay, thanks. Are there any questions? Can you just signify so Paul can let me know who's who? Ominous silence there.
Yeah, I got a question, Mike.
Yes, go on then.
And we've got Howard as well, the question.
Okay, I mean, thank you. That sounds, I'm just looking at the website now and I can see how it, roughly see how it operates. So I'm intrigued as to the business model, as to how it's, you know, functioning and so on. But I guess my first question is a very prosaic one. In terms of budgets, say in the town council here, we can't just pluck £20,000 out of nowhere if there's no sort of, you know, budget heading for it. How did you get over that problem in Princess Risborough?
We were very fortunate in Princess Risborough that we'd worked with Wickham District Council on economic regeneration. So there was a pot of money allocated to Wickham Town Centre, to Marlow Town Council and to Risborough. So we refunctioned that. But just like you in Buckingham, John, we've not had many events this year. So, you know, we've had a large surplus in our events budget and we've redeployed that to support our retailers.
No, it's more, mine's more of an administrative question, really. Rather, I'm sure the money is there, and you're right there. You know, certain things have not happened, although other things have, and as a result, I think the last count was we're going to be about 4,000 down at the end of the financial year. Could be a bit more than that when we get to it. It's more of just a, you know what local government policy is like, that you can't just create a new budget heading, just administration. But if that's possible to do that and just shift money into a new budget or into the budget pot, as it were, and that's legal, then I think it's a great use of resources by the sounds of it.
Well, I have to say, just like Buckingham, we are a gold status council here in Risborough. So I'm sure Sue and Paul would make sure that whatever proposals we have would always be kept legal. But yeah, it's a good question. But we were lucky that we had the economic pot from Wickham that we were able to access. But we have topped that up by viring funds from other areas.
So was it 20 grand from your precept or from High Wycombe's precept?
It was. It's not from Wickham District Council's precept. It was from their share of the new homes bonus scheme.
Oh, right. I see. Okay. Thank you.
That's an eye opener, isn't it? Yes. Any more questions?
Yeah. The new homes bonus has gone. How many people live in Princess Risborough and say within sort of environs of that in the surrounding villages? And also your payment presumably was done on credit card. So that would be through Princess Risborough's credit card machine and bank account, or would it go through a separate bank account?
So for Risborough Basket 1, the sales were placed via the individual retailers via telephone call. And as I said, you know, we knew that level of convenience was not going to work for Risborough Basket 2.0. So our platform is held on a Stripe payment system. We have set up a community interest company, Risborough Basket CIC, to manage those payments. In terms of the total population, Howard, I think Risborough and the surrounding areas, it's about 21,000.
Yes, Joe.
From a retailer's point of view, so you have a platform that's however many shops are part of, and you've got the Stripe payment system. So where does the money go to? Because that will only go to one area. So how do the individual shops get their payments from the goods that they've got on that platform?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So when you set up the platform, what you do is you allocate each product a brand owner. So what the system automatically does is says, right, those cupcakes are from Tracy Mann Cupcakes. They cost £20 for a box of, say, 10. So what it automatically does is transfers that money at the end of each week, minus the card processing fees, to Tracy Mann Cupcakes. Okay. So it's the whole process is entirely automated.
Thank you.
What happens, Matt, if you've got two retailers selling roughly the same sort of stuff and both getting orders in?
Yeah. Again, it's a very good question, Chairman. I would say we're fortunate that the high street doesn't have much duplication on it. Obviously, craft and home gifts, we do have quite a lot of similar things. But you can search by shop or you can search by product. And so, say for instance, you were looking at buying some tea towels. Then actually, each shop offers a very different style of towel and things like that. So it's purely down to consumer choice what they actually choose.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions?
Warren's got a hand, Robin's got a hand, and I've got a question.
Sorry, who have?
Warren and Robin.
Okay, let's do them in that order. Warren.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks, Matt, for a really useful update on your Princess Risborough basket. I hadn't realised you'd relaunched it as a version 2, so that sounds really interesting. I think what would be one of the key issues for Buckingham is when we floated a similar idea earlier in the year, during the first lockdown, there wasn't an awful lot of interest. And I just wonder, how did you sell it to retailers that this was something to do?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Warren. I think because we were so successful in Risborough Basket 1, when most high streets were entirely closed, and that our retailers actually had some good income coming in during lockdown 1, they were very receptive to the idea of a Risborough Basket 2.0. We just capitalized on the success that we had during lockdown 1, really. But I have to be honest, we've been doing economic regeneration in Risborough for a couple of years now. And if you'd have said to me in January that 90% of our high street would have an online presence in October, November, I wouldn't have believed it. I honestly would not have believed it. And now they do. And, they genuinely see the benefits of. I think what is the interesting question is when it gets to the end of the year, at some point the town council will have to taper off its level of support and it will have to become a more self-sustaining model. And then when the retailers have to start contributing towards delivery driver costs, promotion, advertising, all things that the town council is currently absorbing, then I think it could be a more difficult conversation. But yeah, to answer your original question, without a shadow of a doubt, by the retailers earning money in lockdown 1, when they did get those £10,000 government grants, that made a real difference for them supporting the new version of Basket 2.0.
Okay, thanks. Robin?
Thank you, Chairman. It sounds a very innovative and wonderful scheme you've got going there, and all credit for what you've achieved. Is there any support from the Buckinghamshire Council into this scheme, as they have an economic interest? And I am minded to one of the schemes we did many years ago when we started a farmers market, only to find out that the government then latterly supported other farmers markets, and we funded it from source, but we couldn't compete with a government supported scheme. Do you envisage that being a problem going forward? Because one of the things when they winding back something after it's been successful is difficult if it doesn't succeed. With you suggested the traders will have to take it on in the end. Is that what I heard you say, or did you not say that?
So to be completely honest, Robin, we are looking at funding from our own community board to expand the Risborough basket more in terms of coverage into the whole of the community board area. With regards to competing with government funding, I hope, and we did have some initial conversations with the economic development team at Bucks, that maybe this is something they would like to look at rolling out. There's been a couple of changes in leadership of that particular department, but we are still making some progress. I think Paul did have a couple of conversations with Jill Harding about plans that Buckinghamshire may have in terms of funding. But yeah, I think it's a really good point. We definitely need to look at, as all town councils in the new unitary authority, we do need to look at, what pots of funding might be available to help us, support our retailers.
Thank you for that. It's grateful that you've come along. These things are, if you're going to do them, they've got to work, and you've obviously made it work. We have to be really sure that we make it work, because failing doing something like this with public money is not a good look.
Right, Paul, I think you had a question.
Well, Dean's got a question and Mary's got a question now as well.
Okay, well, do you want to wait till last then?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, Dean.
Thanks ever so much for your presentation, Matthew, and giving up your time for us. Obviously, you've got lots of engagement from the retailers and traders, and I'm really interested to know whether or not that engagement existed at a good level prior to this initiative, and how you instigated that level of engagement to make this project as successful as it obviously was. I'm assuming that you would have had to have a good level of engagement in place for it to be this successful. Am I right? And if I am, what did you do to get that engagement?
Okay, well, thank you for that. Yeah, so it was the main key driver for building the relationship with our retailer was taking over the running of all of our town centre events. So about 4 years ago, we took over the running of Christmas Light Switch On, Summer Festival, Easter Egg hunts, etc., etc. And we reconfigured those events so that the income that was being generated from people eating out, dining, was pushed towards our local businesses rather than, say, pop-up vans and food trucks from outside of the area. So that established a level of trust with the retailers. And then what we did is we then said, right, we're going to appoint a 2-day-a-week town centre coordinator, someone paid for by the town council using the surplus that we made from the Thursday market, to basically say, look, this is the person, they're here to, be your conduit for the town council, what you need to be improved. And it also helped bridge the gap with the market as well, because a lot of retailers sometimes have issues with, markets. They pay a small rent, they pay no rates, they're in for the day, it's the busiest footfall. So we then said, look, market day is the busiest footfall day, and the surplus from that day is now reinvested in you having someone available to you on a regular basis to support your business and your aspirations. So you're right, it very much wasn't a case of, oh, we're thinking of doing this. It was a case of a couple of years of building rapport, the town council taking greater ownership of things that happen in Princes Risborough, and that level of trust just being built upon as we went into lockdown 1.
Thank you.
Mary.
Thank you. My comment really relates back to the practicalities of how it was run. And did you have a lot of your businesses who already had an online presence, or was it mainly businesses that didn't have any of that you managed to plug the gap?
So several of our retailers previously have had websites, looking at trying to draw more people, but that was more about serving the population outside of Princes Risborough. None of them had an online delivery presence or click and collect service prior to this. So yes, it very much was the case that we basically created that for them. It wasn't something that they were previously doing.
Right. There's a lot of our businesses that do have their own online presence, do have a click and collect that they've generated. And I've always done from my shop local free delivery anyway, whether it's people that walk in the door or pick things up online. I've always delivered locally. So that I think in Buckingham that would be less likely than it sounds like you were in Risborough.
I think in fairness, and it's really great that you guys are doing local deliveries. We're noticing with Risborough Basket too, there's a lot of what we call multi-basket orders. So someone that may have previously ordered from you is now also ordering some Scotch eggs from the butchers, or maybe some crafting materials from Sally's Sewing Box. So it's driving, income levels for everyone. And what we're saying with us providing the delivery and fulfillment service, it gives you an opportunity to remain focused on your own business, so that, your time is far more valuable, driving your business sales, increasing your margins, thinking about how you can draw more people into Buckingham, than you driving around in a car, dropping off deliveries, in multiple levels of value. So what we're doing is giving you more time to spend in your business so that you can make your business flourish, which makes the town centre flourish, which makes the overall community do much better.
Sounds good. And I do like that idea of collaboration and the multi-basket idea, that I think we could do a lot more, that people do go to more than one place. And that's one of the ideas we had with some of the ways of generating more traffic in town. So that's a brilliant thing.
Okay, thanks. Paul, is there anybody else?
No, can I ask a couple of questions? Oh, Robin wants to come back as well.
Well, you get yours in. Robin's had a go.
Okay. Three things, Matt. First, town centre coordinator role. If it's okay with you, I'll talk to Sue tomorrow and try and get a copy of the job description and get a bit of feedback from that. In terms of one of the issues Buckingham has, and I guess we'll have more concern about going forwards, is the high street itself, and trying to have a bustling, thriving centre of the town rather than town centre gradually dying. Do you see this process of having benefited that? And if it does go on as a project, do you think there's a risk to the town centre actually losing footfall? And could you just slip in a comment about what Princess Risborough's done in terms of the building you bought at the high street and how that's benefited the high street?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, obviously, footfall is a big thing for the town. And, by creating this online delivery platform, are we taking away people visiting the town, spontaneous purchases and things like that? It is a concern, but we have a slightly older demographic in Risborough, and we're very much mindful that they will always want to visit the high street. The community bus's busiest day, it's very similar to your BART bus, is market day. So, again, we know that footfall will always remain consistent because we're not putting the market online. Their business model doesn't work that way. But in terms of overall footfall, what we're saying is, well, the busiest days our retailers have had the past 18 months have been days when we're placing events. So if footfall slightly falls off because of, people are now shopping online, then as far as we're concerned, we need to boost that back up by putting more money into events to support general footfall. So it becomes more of an occasion, because the one thing I haven't had an opportunity to talk about this evening, and the questions have been really good, I have to say I'm really glad I don't have to chair Buckingham Town Council. My councillors are much less inquisitive, but then I've realised this is on YouTube, so I probably hope that none of them watch this at the end of that. But the thing is, every national media outlet is talking about how this is Amazon's year, that Amazon are going to make a fortune this Christmas because of the fact that all these shops are closed. That's not going to happen in Risborough. And let's be honest about pandemics. There may be another one in 5 years or 7 years or 10 years. You just don't know. So we're trying to make sure that our retailers are geared up for the future. And in terms of high street, you asked the question, we bought, the old NatWest building, which we've now let out, and there's £300,000 worth of refurb work going on to that. And it will open in April, May next year. But because we purchased that building, that's going to generate a very nice rental yield each year. And we're putting that rental yield back into town centre coordinator roles, back into events, and not affecting the precept at all. So, you know, it's providing a good return.
Fine, thanks very much. It's very nearly half past, Paul, and I know that you said you had to get away. I'm sure we found that very thought-provoking in the main.
Chairman, if you have any questions or anything, if you want to send me any questions or anything, you know, please do. My email address is on the Princes Risborough Town Council website. You know, more than happy to take any questions or anything that you may have, Chairman.
Before you go, could I ask you how active your residents association is?
Robin, I didn't see anybody signify that you wanted to speak, but go on quickly.
I did beforehand, actually. I did beforehand, then you took the town clerk. Have you got a big business community working together? Because we haven't got a working business association stroke community in Buckingham now. Different people have tried many times to support that, and it's fallen down. Would be worth knowing how much you've got going on in that field, because that's key, I think, to get them all talking together. If we haven't got that.
So we used to have the Risborough Area Business Group. Funny enough, I was chairman of it when I first moved to Princes Risborough in 2009. But like you said, Robin, a lot of people go and do their own things. High street retailers move on, new businesses come in. So no, it's not been active for about 5 or 6 years now. And again, I always say the role of town councils or parish councils is to step in, you know, to fill the gaps that, you know, other organisations can no longer fulfil. So no, we didn't have a big business group or network or association or, you know, collaboration. It was purely, you know, led and facilitated by the town council.
Yeah, I know, because our chairman of the committee done a lot of work on the Traders Association historically, but trying to keep it going.
Yeah, no, it's a really difficult one. And again, you know, we're all volunteers at a town or parish council level. There's only so much, you know, we can do. So that's why we said we had to put additional money into the staffing budget, get that town centre coordinator so that there was someone there on a regular basis providing that, you know, direct link between the two.
Thank you so much.
No, pleasure.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Chairman.
I suspect you'll be hearing from us.
Absolute pleasure, and enjoy the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.
We'll carry on with the formalities of the meeting then and take the minutes of the 24th of September meeting. Everybody happy with that? The absence of comment suggests that you are, so we'll move on again to item 5, the action list. Everything's marked ongoing, but the BNDP design, is there any update on that, Paul?
I'm not sure what we said at the last meeting. I've got a meeting next week, hopefully, to agree the survey. So the aim of the neighbourhood plan is to have at least a scope and a clear evidence base in place by early March. So we're looking at running a Buckingham survey, hopefully in December or possibly January, to create a substantial evidence base for that. And we're also just starting to do work on a design guide for Buckingham. I've had a load of stuff through on that today. So there'll be a separate subgroup of the neighbourhood plan subgroup looking at that over the next couple of months.
Okay, so can there be an update at the next meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. What's next? Oh, look, it's you, Paul, creating a culture and arts strategy for Buckingham. One of these dreaded verbal reports.
I know you don't like verbal reports, Mike. And I left this on here just to pitch the idea of, and I know that Buckinghamshire Council are currently really pushing for the county-wide cultural strategy. And if someone were to ask me what our strategy around culture is for Buckingham, I would come up with an answer, but it might not be particularly coherent. So we have a tourism strategy and we know where we are with tourism. We have an events programme, we have various arts groups. But if we want to put in for bids for significant money around art and culture, we would have to have a clearer understanding of what our approach is. So it was just to get a feel of whether it's worth us putting together a proposal for, not putting together a draft cultural strategy for Buckingham, but putting together a proposal to create a draft cultural strategy for Buckingham, if that makes sense. Something that obviously fit within the county's approach, but would bring some clarity and also be really clear about all the positive cultural aspects that are to Buckingham, of which there are a lot. So it could be used, something to start to use to sell Buckingham in a more coherent, strategic way a bit more.
There is already the cultural outreach group based really on the Aylesbury, on the County Museum in Aylesbury, isn't there?
Yes, but not Buckingham.
No. But we could do something similar. I mean, we've got the historic core. We've got plenty of talented artists around. There must be scope for it. Anybody got any comments on this?
Dean and Warren both have hands, and Robin.
Okay, Dean.
I think it goes back to the point that Matthew made in his presentation, that how closely aligned the events work was to the economic recovery of the town.
Yeah.
So if you can really match up the events with the benefits that can bring to the traders, for example, from an economic perspective, then we've got something that we can work with. I think that we've had an events manager at the town council for years, and I'm not suggesting for a second that they aren't aligned, but if we really do take that to the degree where it can be very productive and beneficial for the traders and retailers, and that could fit very closely within a cultural strategy for the town.
Okay, Warren.
Thanks, Mike. There's always been a long-held ambition, which started off a long time ago with the Buckingham Centre for the Arts, for having some kind of art centre. We're quite odd that we are quite a large town now, but we have no specific arts building. And I suppose that's probably as a result that we have a huge range of multi-use buildings, which are utilised by a wide range of organisations. Particularly, of course, the university being very generous in donating the use of many of its spaces to clubs and associations. But if we were to want to raise our profile in the cultural arena, and particularly given the large patch that Buckingham covers in North Bucks, I mean, there's a long way to go for a professionally kitted out space. Basically, Aylesbury or Milton Keynes is your local. I think there is a great opportunity to build a case that we do need some kind of art space that would allow for more professional types of events to be carried on, that the community centre, for all its benefits, does struggle to deal with, from lighting, acoustics, from arts shows right through to, the annual pantomime. It's a great space, but it's very compromised because of all the different things it has to cope with. So I suppose, from my perspective, it would be interesting to know if Buckingham has an appetite to sort of look again at that ambition of a cultural centre, and are there partners that would want to be part of that? Because I'd imagine the university would be certainly a user or a keen supporter of it. We have Stowe with many facilities just on our doorstep, but would they want to have stuff happening in the town? And I suppose what's been really an eye-opener running the Buckingham What's On Facebook group over the last 3 years is actually there are so many interesting cultural events happening that the town council has no finger in. They're quite niche or specialist, but actually they could have a much wider audience. So I think there's great opportunity, but it's making sure that's not seen that there's a particular takeover, that we could work in partnership with a wide range of organisations. And I think there's a great opportunity, given the future growth in North Bucks, that there could well be funding opportunities and stuff to do something quite ambitious, in the not too distant future.
Totally agree, Warren. Anybody else?
Robin and Dean's got a hand again.
Robin, then.
Well, firstly, several times when Warren brings up a good point, there's been attempts to get a cultural building over 10 or 20 years. People have tried to do that. Unfortunately, the one chance we had, we lost the cinema to the garage and then to Sainsbury's, where it would have been the ideal building to have done that. But the appetite and the money wasn't there at the time. and the town wasn't the size it is now. And I think if that was available now, one, people would be snatching it. It may not be the ideal building, but it would have been something. That said, I think one thing that I've heard through the complete meeting tonight is that they think there's a budget in events. All the budget in events is committed to expenditure and stuff that it can do. Now, growing the budget, I can assure you, takes 10 or 15 years, because the reason you've got an events list is because that was grown over a number 10 or 15 years of different stuff coming forward. So if you're going to change the way you do something with events, you've got to have a deep look at what people attend, what people do, and whatever. And the reason we do the Christmas lights in Buckingham is because historically the traders stepped back from doing it, and the town council stepped forward and funded it. So we have got a history of funding and stuff, and we have got a history of trying to do stuff in the community, spring fairs and different stuff. I've not heard anyone say anything that we have done and achieved. And different members of the council over different times and different people have. And we do a selection of music events. I think the COVID this year has been a disaster for events, but I think we do punch above our weight. If you look across the way in Northamptonshire, what we do on an events calendar. But the events budget isn't there solely to support the traders. It's there, was originally grown to create ambience in the town. Now, when we have the fair in, that's another event. So I think we need to be careful where you think you're going to get the money from. You've got to actually precept it and raise it and generate it. If you're going to think you're going to redirect money, that's a whole big question, which you're going to have to bring forward proposals to do that. And different people in the community have already lodged themselves into different events, like the Christmas parade funded. Would you want to carry on funding the Christmas parade or reallocate the money to something else? Would you want to do different events? It's not an easy one. You've got to actually think about it. So, but I do think Warren's idea about getting a cultural centre together and getting the buy-in to it, and which is lots of people's ideas. I remember Councillor Strain-Clark, when she was mayor, trying to do something. I remember long before that, Pauline Stevens trying to do something, and probably Ruth did in her first term of office. Everybody's had a go at this. If Warren can bring it together and get the people to do what everybody wants to do, but you've got to have a site and you've got to have land, or you've got to have the money to purchase a building. Of course, the town council did try to several times to buy buildings in my time as a council, and every time for different reasons they haven't happened. But if it's a partnership about doing something, I think to create a proper space for Buckingham, I think the town council could buy into that if it had part ownership in it, and it didn't get done like it did with the community centre, where it ended up spending money on it and not owning it, and it didn't end up buying the athletic pitch and then not owning it. So we've got to go into this open-handed and partnership. I think partnership's the key word, and I am infused that Warren's got the energy to look again. I think he's to be admired for that, but we've got to find the land to do it, or the space. Wolf Yard historically was always going to be the place where we had regeneration. Where in 2002, when we had the regeneration of Buckingham proposals come forward from the government, that was phase 2 was looking at, or phase 3 was looking at Wolf Yard. Phase 1 never happened, phase 2 didn't happen, and phase 3 obviously never got talked about. But Wolf Yard was sort of featured because you've got to find a space in the town which could do it. But of course, that's not in the ownership of anybody else. And at the time, the chief executive at the time, Andrew Grant, when he was asked the question, said they had no appetite to invest into Buckingham. It wasn't politically possible. So I think if a new council's thinking differently, that is to be admired, and we should work with them.
Thank you, Robin. Dean?
I completely agree with what Warren was saying about the need for a creative and arts space. First thing I was going to mention is that the next phase of the Royal Latin School's fundraising campaigns is in arts, which is happening just after the sports campuses completed. So there, if you're talking about collaboration, Robin, there's a potential for collaborating with the school on the arts campaign that they'll be working on. The other thing is that we don't necessarily have to have an indoor art space. We can also look at outdoor art space, because a lot of the costs that are involved in events that go on in the town are around actually kind of getting staging and hiring lorries and trucks and things like this. Whereas if we had a dedicated outdoor performance space, some of those costs would automatically disappear. And it would also mean that you've got all-round access to an outdoor performance space. And I think it's not just about building a creative space, it's also about building the spirit of culture within the town. So you have to kind of facilitate that. So you have to get that level of interest up so that people are actually interested in engaging in culture and arts. And you can do that in steps. It doesn't have to be a dramatic, here's a building, now we're going to create arts. You can have an outdoor space that kind of generates that spirit of culture and arts, which I think the town needs now.
Thank you. Anybody else want to contribute?
No.
Paul, anybody else?
No, nobody else.
Okay. I think we can say that there is an appetite for a culture and arts strategy.
Definitely.
It just needs working up somehow or the other.
Yeah.
Should we move on to item 8 then, the community board funding? Another verbal report.
Well, it's kind of verbal, except I did send through this afternoon 3 applications which were agreed for funding at the community board last night, which are money for the Christmas parades window display competition, funding for a project which I think we talked about, and then the economic recovery subgroup of the community board spoke about previously, which we've worked on with Mary and Warren and others to put together some branding. The idea was going to be that we would have immediately got together a pack of branding to encourage people to shop in the town leading up to Christmas. So money for bunting to go in each shop, a raffle to go in each of the shops. So every time you shop at the shop, you get a raffle ticket. The thing I'm most excited about is a big selfie poster to go in the middle of town. So have your picture, take your own picture in front of a thing saying I'm shopping in Buckingham. Obviously, we can't do that right now because of restrictions. Hopefully restrictions will end about the 2nd of December, but how unrestricted Buckingham then becomes, or yet obviously we don't know, and I wouldn't even want to guess at the moment. So we might have to move quite quickly, or that might move to being more of a shop in Buckingham after Christmas in the winter thing. So we'll have to be flexible in how we do it, but we'll take that as it comes. And the BART bus also had money to run 2 trips a week into Buckingham leading up to Christmas, which I guess will also be a bit flexible. That's Warren's project. So good projects coming through from the community board on economic development ahead of other projects, really.
I certainly think we should record our thanks to the community board for coming up with the funding at fairly short notice. Let's just hope that things are such that we can actually spend it. I'm conscious of the fact I did jump over item 6. I want to come back to that after the next item, so that we've got all the sort of town centre community board, all that sort of stuff in one place. So if we move on to item
Warren and John both have hands on that item.
Okay, Warren.
Thanks. Just to say, given the really interesting presentation from Matt earlier, the community board working group has already had some conversations about the benefits of some town centre support. So I think there is an appetite to put together something. And I don't know if Paul, if Sophia has been in touch with you since the last couple of weeks on that particular topic, but that, you know, if the town council is happy to support that, that is definitely something I'll be very keen to develop. And I know the traders that were at our working group thought it's probably one of the key items that would help deliver some of the activity that we want in the town centre. So I'll be really keen to push that if there is support from here.
Yeah.
John and Robin have hands.
Yeah, building on what Warren's just said, I mean, I've not looked at the detail of this as yet, but is there some way of using some or all of these various packages, which are all designed to sell stuff in the town centre? I mean, do we even know, for example, how many of the local retail shops obviously Mary's mentioned hers already this evening, have some sort of online presence? And could we be using the money to promote that to people so that there is a collected in one place, a sort of website of some kind for people to order online from the shops, not just takeaway food, but other stuff as well, crockery and china and so on, from Mary's shop or whatever. Is there a way in which we could use that money rapidly? Because we've got to turn this around on a sixpence, really. Otherwise, we're going to be out of the lockdown perhaps before we know it. And therefore, the use will be need to be rededicated, as it were. Is there some way in which we can use the money in a creative way to get people spending money in the town, but virtually?
Yeah, we got the question. Paul?
So part of the answer to that, obviously now the TIC is shut again. We have got the TIC's new website, which has been going well and getting lots of hits. Emma's been given the task of gathering as much information as she can find about which businesses are doing click and collect and are open online. So the last couple of days, she's been emailing and calling around and trying to collate that. It's quite hard to get that information because when businesses are shut, I think some of them just aren't doing anything, which I suppose tells you something. But she'll be collecting that and publishing it through that website, I guess, in the next week or so. So we're doing what we can on that, but obviously any help anybody can suggest and ways of gathering that more, and anybody else we work with on that would be really helpful.
Okay, Mary, do you want to comment on any of that?
And Joe has a hand as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got quite a good online presence at the moment and doing quite a lot of click and collect and local deliveries to a 6 mile radius. So there's definitely people using it. But I haven't been approached by Emma, who does have my email because I've been in touch with her for other stuff. So it's just getting around to people because I'm not the only one, I'm sure.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. Mary, did you want to come in on this?
Yes, like Joe, I think I have a similar sort of just in the website, the click and collect and the Facebook, etc. Post the online presence basically. But just following on also from what I said previously was that there are a number of businesses that don't have that. So plugging that gap and helping those out would be good. But also John's idea of actually linking in with the ones that do already have something running and helping to promote that, I think would be very good. Because it is a duplication if you want to set up something else, and it becomes a little bit complicated. And there are other groups that are already collating for some of these people that don't have their own online presence.
Okay, Joe?
Sorry, one of the not legal sort of problems could be that if people have chosen to go on furlough, they then can't trade at all. So people have got to weigh up whether it's benefit for them to not get the government help and still work or not.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I think Dean has a hand and Robin has a hand.
Dean?
That was exactly my question to those who are to traders or retailers. Is there a bigger incentive to remain closed, or is it better to go online and do what you can online from your perspective?
Well, first time around, I went on furlough and closed completely. But this time, with it in the run up to Christmas, I took the decision not to, and I've stayed open, and I'm really pushing it. And it's, fingers crossed, seems to be working quite well at the moment. But it's different for different businesses. If they haven't already got an online presence, it might be something that they won't, or might be concerned about coming off one lot of money and not knowing what the, it's a balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And will they compare your income from the previous year of previous Christmas season, or will they compare it over the the duration of the whole
It's not
year?
like it.
Yeah.
What if people are on furlough? Do you mean?
Mm.
Furlough is your salary. It's not the
So it's spread over the year.
No, yes, it's what your normal salary is. I'm a limited company, so it goes on salary. If you're self-employed, it goes on your income. So it depends which way you go.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Did you say Robin wanted to come in?
Yes, and John had a hand as well.
Yeah, following on from what Councillor White Warren said, I mean, if we're going to go back to the community board for some additional funding, it wasn't too bumpy. I think Warren might agree, getting the money through. There was one bump in the road, but we managed to bump over that. Getting the money agreed last night. There was a lot of consensus about what we wanted to do. My worry is that we have already, the town council has put one or two other things which we're going to bid in there. I presume the town clerks are progressing those, but I do think if this is going to go in, we've got to make sure that we sell it as a wider than Buckingham thing. There's lots of village shops, there's lots of community traders in who are outside, farm shops and such as things. It's got to really resonate with people. It's got to have a wide benefit, I think, because otherwise people might lose faith with it all coming to Buckingham. Villages have got little shops and things. We want to keep that trade going as well, because if they don't go, they fail, everybody fails. I think we need to look at it in a wider scope, but putting it together under a rush under COVID and doing it, we just took, whatever we do, we want to make sure that there's legacy in it. When I say legacy, that the benefits that come out of it can be continuous benefits to trade and continuous support, and not sort of niche support at the moment. And then when the war is over sort of attitude, everyone walks away from it. You've got to actually do something which is going to be continuous and be there and may evolve over time, but it's got to be continuous. Otherwise the money's not really well spent. I think you want to make sure you keep the businesses there beyond the lockdown and there for another 10 or 15 years, so it's got to be legacy led, I think. But I think Warren's suggestion of using the community board, right, but I don't know if he agrees with me. We need to widen it to the villages and other sort of businesses to make sure that we get the buy-in at the board from other people.
Okay, thank you, Robin. John?
Yeah, I was simply going to say, obviously we've been looking for people who have websites, but have we simply asked people to let us know? Put out some queries on social media, say, tell us about your business. If you're trading online, let us know, and we're going to try and assemble some sort of hub whereby all those who are in Buckingham and perhaps beyond, who are trading online, that we can organise at least a page on our website.
Has that not already been done, John, with this stuff that Emma's working? I mean, there's a whole load of
well, has Emma gone out? I've not seen any social media
I haven't finished.
inquiries from Emma.
A whole load of traders and restaurants on there where you can click and get straight onto their websites. And I'm pretty certain that something came out asking them to provide that information or update it. Okay,
I've not seen any of that.
Yeah, it did, but we haven't sent anything out since the last restriction came in place in terms of social media. So we can revisit that. That would be a helpful thing to do.
Okay.
I think we should do that as a matter of urgency if we possibly can.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else?
And Mary.
Come on, Mary.
There is also Warren's list where he put out last time, which could be extended to include the shops. I think you did have a few on them last time, didn't you, Warren? To publicise what was doing click and collect, opening, takeaways, etc.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Warren has a hand.
Yeah, well, just to respond to that, I must admit, because there's a bit of competition this time round, I thought as it was a voluntary effort, I would stand back and let the town council do it. But I hope hopefully that can be concluded soon, because it took me several weeks to get my list to a decent standard, because it is difficult to search out who's doing what, because I suppose one of the challenges of Buckingham businesses is they're not the greatest at sharing what they're up to.
No.
But the point that was made by a few, including Robin, is that it would definitely be worthwhile that call is not just to the high street, but to some of the more niche companies that are on our outskirts, Browns and those sort of companies. If they're still doing some kind of service, that they should be included.
Like World of Wood and the butchers on the industrial estate and so forth, you mean?
Well, whoever's open and is local.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, let's move on then. We go to item 6, the Buckingham Health Hub. Nigel, are you there?
I am indeed. Can you hear me?
Thank you very much for being so patient. Do you want to introduce your paper?
Well, I was hoping probably
I like the wine. I like the wine. Are you sharing that around?
Well, you're very welcome to. You know my address. I had hoped that maybe forlornly that people might have read the paper. I'm very happy to quickly go over it. The basic concept is to explore how Buckingham might be improved by bringing the new health hub, free car parking, and a widened leisure and retail experience into the centre of Buckingham. Now, a considerable number of people want the new health hub to be in the town centre as opposed to out of town for two main reasons: easy accessibility for all, convenience for our elderly, and to regenerate our town centre at a time of potential and permanent retail demise. This is still possible, and the developer of the health hub at Lace Hill confirms that the work already done can be transferred to this new site. The health hub would require a minimum of 25,000 square feet and some 100 car spaces. This is going to be it's not going to be an all singing and dancing health hub, but it's going to be a vast improvement on what we've got at the moment. The only known site capable of development of this size is the Waitrose car park. Engineers have assessed that a new building on stilts could be built over the existing car park, thus maintaining the existing car park and not interfering with the floodplain. Additionally, there would be a mix of quality residential and both key worker and shared ownership, together with a huge improvement to the riverside, creating a destination. And can I add that putting a cultural hub into a scheme like this would be quite straightforward. And it was originally part of my thoughts that some sort of conference center in conjunction with the university, which could be a Shakespearean theatre or an entertainment venue, multi venue, similar to one in Cambridge, which one of the university colleges has done there. One must take a positive standpoint and not be deterred by the problems in order to achieve what will be crucial for our town. The ownership of the land is in the control of Buckinghamshire County Council. Buckinghamshire County Council may take the easy option, and I'm afraid this could be as important an aspect of what I'm saying as any, but if Buckingham County Council take the easy option of developing this land for social housing to alleviate the pressures elsewhere, such as in Aylesbury, then Buckingham gets nothing out of this. It is therefore of the essence that the town, its town council and its appointed county councillors are fully engaged in persuading Buckingham County Council to develop or sell the site with our plans, not theirs, overcoming any historic rights of way agreements which may still exist after previous efforts to develop. I mean, Howard Mordew very kindly did say that there were some intrinsic problems with rights of way, etc., which have to be resolved. This requires full investigation and of course can be done once once a decision is made. There's nothing fundamentally which can't be achieved, so we can do it. So the pros are quite clear. I can run through them. The cons are negligible. I think that people's main concern about the view from the heartlands of how a development of the car park might look are not warranted, because when you go onto the heartlands, you're looking down on the car park site. And by looking down on it, if we were to put a garden roof terrace onto the development, you would actually improve what is rather ordinary, bland looking car park site. And you would certainly not impact on the roofscape of the town, which in fact rises above that. I think the conclusion really is whether the people in the Buckingham Town Council and this committee feel that they can have an influence on Buckinghamshire County Council for us to get back control of that site, which is in essence in our demise, not theirs, and that we should be allowed to develop it the way it fits best for Buckingham. And the big question is, how do we persuade the council members, county council members who represent Buckingham to support and achieve this aim? And that really is a question to be resolved with those said councillors, to see whether we can bring pressure to bear that this is a Buckingham site. We want it for Buckingham. We don't want to be a depository for anything that the council might choose to put on the site. Here endeth the lesson.
Thank you, Nigel. Very succinctly put, if I might say so. Any comments? Nobody?
John, Howard and Robin.
In that order then.
And Warren.
John, Howard.
Warren was before me.
Speaking, sorry, am I speaking next?
John.
Okay. Broadly speaking, I welcome this. I think this is a good idea. Nigel and I have chatted about this sort of stuff over a cup of coffee before now, and I think as a way of improving car parking, as a way of adding space to the town, I think it's worth exploring at the very least, to look at the possibilities and look at the impact. I mean, the skyline's about to change quite a lot anyway in that part of town with the arrival of the care home to the east of the community centre. I mean, that's going up pretty high by the looks of the various constructions that are already in place. So I think we need to look into possibilities here, and I would be supportive of this. Whether the Buckinghamshire Council would give up what they regard as being a cash cow, I doubt it somehow. But there's no reason why the Town Council shouldn't work in close association with Buckinghamshire Council to make such a thing happen. You know, let's go for it. Let's have some vision for the future. Let's use our riverside. Absolutely.
Thank you, John. Howard?
Well, as I said, there is a right of passage over the whole of the car park, and that's in the deeds, and we had enough problems when we tried to extend the community centre. But what I'd like to know is, what do the doctors think about this idea, and how would you get the funding from the NHS, the Buckingham Health Trust, the CCG, and all the other pots of money that were within the health service that was spent? You know, we spent from 2008 up until now to try and get it all together. It's very difficult to negotiate or get any funding from anyone within the health sector, especially for build. They don't mind doing existing and commissioning services, but they're not very keen on building. And the other thing was, how many stories do you envisage in getting the requisite number of square foot for what you want?
Okay. The first thing is that the CCG money will be applicable whatever site the doctors go to. Secondly, the doctors that I've spoken to, Nick Stewart, etc., are more than happy to come into the town centre. I've spoken to Montpellier Estates, who are the developers. They're happy to transfer their knowledge and cooperation with the doctors to the new site. Mainly, as I put it to them, it then frees up their site in Lace Hill for further development. And as far as the design is concerned, that is a very, very big question and cannot be done over a Zoom conversation without some ownership details sorted out in the first place. But the design can certainly be handled and incorporate all the things that I've mentioned. We've already done, I mean, I'm actually not involved in this commercially. I'm simply here because I think this is what should happen. But I'm quite happy to give design input. Now, in terms of financing, there are many people out there who would finance this. And what I would possibly have in mind is one of the very large semi-private housing associations who would very happily come in and do this on a part private, part social housing basis. So it can be financed. I think as far as the council, Buckingham Council is concerned, when the appraisal is done, there will be a residual valuation which could be paid to Buckingham County Council, or they could take a ground lease. So there are ways in which they can benefit at the same time as give us a development on that site for the benefit of Buckingham.
Thank you. Robin?
I am here, thank you. I'm always fascinated with proposals, and they're always interesting. What conversations have you had with Buckinghamshire Council, firstly, about this? Because they're a new authority. They may be building their own vision of what they're going to do. I couldn't imagine they haven't got any vision. I think it's probably premature. The council hasn't had an opportunity to be elected to grow vision. The land in Cornwall's Meadow, yes, it belongs to the council, but it also, the visual space belongs to everybody. It belongs to the town. And if you're going to change that space, it needs very careful consideration. It needs proper consultation. It needs liquidity, and it needs to know that everybody involved in it is got a buy-in on the scheme. Saying that, I would always be interested in looking at drawings. I wouldn't comment on whether I agree with it because I sit on planning, so I will never comment on that. But I will comment on the fact that I'm still waiting for you to do the designs for the new council chamber opposite the block that you once happened, and never seen those yet. So so where do you feel to go with? Because your first hurdle is to have a proper conversation with Buckinghamshire Council, because anything we say, anything anybody says, bears no relevance unless the local authority, who are the landowner, have got a buy-in. And to say that they would want to build social housing on there, I want them to build social housing, period. But I don't think they're in the business of building social housing over car parks. I've never heard anyone suggest that. You know, so that's erroneous. But firstly, what conversation are you going to have a conversation with them? Because you need to do that, because everything else is going to be.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, Robin. I think the first route is to establish contact with the county council. The big question and the whole purpose of this paper is to decide, are we all together on this, and how are we going to approach them? Is it going to be an approach by our existing councillors to a meeting with John Chilver and others, or what? Because I think, as you rightly say, it's of the essence that we get into Buckingham County Council and make our point that we want to have control of this site. We don't mind giving them value for the site. It will be a residual value on the end development. And if we can get them to sign up to a residual valuation, then they get money, or they get a long leasehold or whatever. That conversation needs to be held. And that is not going to be held by me phoning up Buckinghamshire County Council and saying, I'm going to come and see you, because that would carry no weight at all. It's got to come from you guys who are controlling the town council and our county councillors who are the Buckingham representatives. So if in fact you put together a group of people involving those aforesaid people, I will happily join it and lead the conversation.
I respect your point of view, but being a councillor isn't quite in the same vein as what you say. There are all rules around declaring interest, code of conduct, rights to do money. Councillors aren't going to walk into a room with a developer very readily, or a person who wants to do a project. Right? We all want to remain councillors, so we probably don't want to be very careful how we tread on that. And that's why I said I'm not giving you my support, I'm giving you my interest. That's a completely different perspective. So when I say you need to talk to council, you really do need to talk to the legal officers of the council. To think that councillors can lay claim over anything isn't how it is. Democracy doesn't work like that. Councillors have to respect the rules. So we can't just form a quasi group to lobby them. You really need to start with an exploratory conversation with the council through them to actually ascertain whether, with a business case, they're interested. At that point, councillors can talk to you. We couldn't really come together at that point, because I want to remain a councillor if the public willing to have me. I don't want to breach any code of conduct or prejudice myself in any way. So I have to be very careful with that. When I say I offer you my interest, but I can't offer you my support at this stage.
Okay, well, the point is that I, Nigel Morrison, would make no impact going. I've already, many years ago, wrote to, I think it was Andrew Grant, who was the head of Buckingham Council. He didn't have the courtesy to reply to my letter. It then subsequently developed that he had other possible problems, and maybe that's why. But I even got John Bercow to speak to him to say, look, for heaven's sake, answer Nigel's letter, but I was ignored. So to be quite honest, there's no point in me going to Buckingham County Council. It has got to be a credible committee of people from Buckingham Town Council and or Warren or Charlie Clare or Howard or something like that, who've got to say, right, we've had a chat, we want to go and see it, and we've got to be told who we want to go and see, whether we go and see the leader, whether we go and see the legal department. I will be in your hands. I am not the developer in this instance. I've certainly had the vision, but I'm not the developer. This is owned by somebody else. I'm quite happy to help put it all together, but I'm only a cog in the wheel here. And there's no point in me doing this unless I've got the people from particularly the town council and the local councillors. If they say, right, we'll form a committee, Nigel, and the 3 or 4 of us will go and make an appointment with the correct person, and they need to tell me who the correct person is, make the meeting. I will handle the commercial side of it in terms of how to work out a residual valuation, what the commercial terms might be. And so I'm really, and the point I'm here this evening is to ask you to give due consideration as to how this committee can be put together in such a way that I can come with you guys to the correct person sooner rather than later.
Okay, I want to bring Warren in
just
now.
come back on
just
that.
a minute, Robin. Just a minute. Let's just bring Warren in.
Well, thanks, Mike. And Robin's asked some good questions and made some good points, so I think that's really useful. Nigel, I really admire your ambition and enthusiasm for this, but I do fear that you've misunderstood how the public sector works a little bit. So just so we have the record straight, the car park is owned by Buckinghamshire Council. Buckinghamshire County Council, along with the District Council, ceased to exist on the 1st of April. So it's useful to get the terminology right. Now, I'm not sure what the town's appetite is for multi-story buildings on the car park site. So the first thing would be to punt this to the neighbourhood plan, because there is no policy to have anything built in the car park at the moment. So there's a whole philosophical debate to be had about what the future of the car park is. So that's step one. Step two, or step one, depending on which way around you want, is Buckingham the scale of town where you expect to have multi-level development? So Bicester made the jump when they did the multi-story car park and the supermarket and cinema, and that changed the town centre quite dramatically from a very traditional market town to a much more urban town. So again, that's a really important thing for the neighbourhood plan group and the resident of the town of Buckingham to think about. Thirdly, there's a long-standing issue prior to COVID about car parking capacity. And one of the long-mooted options was, do you deck the car park to add additional car parking capacity? As there is nowhere else in the town centre that you could logically build additional car parking. So that's another thing to consider. And I suppose finally, I suppose I just take a little exception to the suggestion that the council might be suggesting it's thinking about already building on the site with housing. That's never been mooted at all. I think Robin did mention that in his conversations.
Well done, Warren.
I've never heard that proposal ever, and it's my ward. So I'm surprised to hear that. So it'd be interesting to know where that's come from. The only thing that the council and its predecessor council has ever thought about is there a need at some point in the future for additional car parking capacity?
Okay. Well,
so
I heard
that's probably the key issues for me.
Yeah.
But I certainly couldn't agree to setting up some kind of committee to punt a scheme like this to the council until the town council has had an opportunity to consider its neighbourhood plan and if it's the right sort of place for development. And it may well be at some point in the future, but there is no planned policy at all for anything on that site at this moment in time.
Okay, well, I think that makes a lot of sense that it obviously has to go into the neighbourhood plan, and the town council should take it forward from this moment on. That's absolutely fine. I would just add that if you read the note which I sent to this meeting, you will see that in fact we're going to create even more car parking in the design, and that the car parking is going to be 3 hours free car parking, so that the car parking issue is resolved for Buckingham in that it's A, going to be free, and B, there's going to be more of it.
So Nigel, I think without you don't even know if the council would even be minded to even consider thinking about selling the car park. That's why I think I really admire your ambition, but there are so many hurdles before you can even talk about free car parking.
Well, yes, but without the vision, without somebody kicking the ball, nothing's going to happen. So I'm kicking the ball, and what I want to know is whether there's an appetite to go forward. If there isn't, that's fine. I'll go and do something else. But I think that the first thing, as has been said by this meeting, is that we get it into the neighbourhood plan is SAP, and when it's in the neighbourhood plan or not, we can then make a decision as to how to go forward. But nothing's going to happen. We'll sit back and look at it and wish.
Okay, is that the way ahead? Everybody agree?
Howard has a hand and Dean has a hand.
Sorry, who and Dean?
Howard and Dean.
I think Dean was first because I've spoken already.
Okay.
Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Mike. I just wanted to put a point in, and that I think this group is all about having vision and creativity, and a sense of direction for the town. And I think that Nigel, I'm really excited by what Nigel spoke about and what I've seen. And I think if we always have put these obstacles in the way of these visions and these creative ideas, we will never ever develop this town. We will just stand still. So we have to be open to these ideas and find ways through all of these barriers. Otherwise, we literally will just be sat here for another 20 years having the same conversations over and over again. So if there is a way to work our way through these kind of obstacles, so we can look at them positively and get past the practicalities, then actually the essence of what Nigel's talking about, there's lots of benefits in it, and I think he should be sort of congratulated for that level of ambition and creativity.
Yes, I don't think we're putting barriers up. We're just steering him through the process.
I know, but you know what I'm saying. The essence of what I'm saying.
Howard,
I just wondered what Nigel's feeling was with the existing Lerchville Centre. Do we just tell the developer not to go ahead, because we can't stop him from going ahead if he wants to go ahead? I mean, obviously you can't have two medical centres, and that is many years in advance of anything you start now.
I think what you said there, Howard, was, do we have a problem with the existing plans for the Lace Hill development? The short answer, if that was the question, then I've spoken with the surgery, the doctors, and I've spoken with Montpellier Estates, who are the developer. And at this stage, but not forever, it is open to transfer the knowledge which they have put together for Lace Hill onto a new site. The doctors would prefer to be in town. The city of Buckingham, the town of Buckingham, would prefer for it to be in town. And the developer, Montpellier, is quite happy to have it transferred in town.
Okay. Anybody else before we wind?
Yeah,
Robin.
I must come back. Nigel, you have to realise that Warren tried to help you by explaining to you that there's a route plan around these things. Local government, public services and whatever, and the way they work, they don't just follow the first candle. What they have to do is take a long time to get to where they are. Warren's suggestion of you approaching the town council and see if it was something in the neighbourhood plan was a sensible suggestion. But what we can't say as councillors at this stage, and shouldn't say as councillors at this stage, that we commit to it, and you keep using the emphasis that we can be herded around like sheep, and that we have to have vision. Councillors have a lot of vision, but they're bound by their code of conduct. They're bound by the rules of local government, and they have to adhere to them. And that's how we operate. Now,
I'm not suggesting you don't.
No, you suggested that we should have some private meeting, which isn't proper, and we should then come forward and lay weight. That isn't how it works. And you then said, "Oh, I'll go to those people who are worthy." So people are worthy if they behave outside the bounds of where we should be. Now, what I think was suggested to you, and I think Warren helped you, he said, go through the local plan. While you're doing that, the conversation can be fluid. No one wants to stop anyone doing anything, and I'm not commenting for or against anything. What we're trying to do is to steer you to it. You suggest, and Howard commented on the health prospect of it. The town has had a very difficult position in that the health centre's moved up to where it is. My understanding is, correct or wrong, you seem to say it's different, that they were going to maybe start the new health centre when they roll forward after that. Now, if that's not the case, and I understood until advised differently, that the money predicated to the Section 106 was an area of space of land, not in cash, and it's not a huge amount of money. So you predicated that could be moved. I think it was to an area of land within the development brief, not to a amount of money in real terms. So you have to be very careful with these things, Nigel. You have to be quite factual, and I think we have to. I think you're a very energetic, vibrant man wishing to do a project, but don't ever mistake councillors' caution as being rejection. Our time to comment on something is when it comes to a proper planning application or put forward at a committee. To commit ourselves in any way now would mean we couldn't in any way comment on it further down, and then we would end up at the standards committee and we'd probably end up being questioned. So we've got to be really cautious about these things. I'm really sorry, that's not meant to be aggressive or offensive, it's just factually correct. And you were given advice by Councillor White. I suggest you follow it.
Okay, thank you, Robin. I think we all know where we are, don't we, Nigel? You need to get this through to the town council for consideration for inclusion in the development plan, and we can handle it that way.
Yes, I would just like to say that was always where I thought this would go through, was the town council, which is the correct place for it to go. So I'm quite happy if you want me to take this up with Paul or John or Howard or whoever, you just point me in the right direction. I'll put the effort in and you can handle the politics.
Well, it should go to the town clerk, Paul, in the first instance,
Very good.
and he'll put it in the right direction.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. That seems to bring us to the end of this very interesting meeting. Chairman's announcements. Well, the next meeting is not until the 11th of February, so I would wish seasonal felicitations to you all. Have a good Christmas as well as we can do in the circumstances, and see you on the 11th of February.
Very good. Bye-bye all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody who's taken part. That's great.